Welcome to Camp Creep, a podcast focusing on anthology horror.
Starting with Tales from the Crypt. I'm your least favorite camp counselor, Tish, DeLano.
And I'm your other camp counselor, Lauren Jewell. Before we go creeping through the crypt, we wanted to tell you a little bit about ourselves and why we decided to do this podcast. So, Tish, I'm gonna do a tiny interview with you.
All right.
Question number the first. Tell me about your horror-able influences. What got you into the genre?
From a small child, I was watching horror, very much attracted to horror. I truly don't remember too much about when I watched what, but very distinctly, and if you've ever seen the movie, you will understand why it's so distinct to my memory. I do remember at the age of 4 watching Mother's Day. Yes.
It's funny you mentioned that because it's currently on Shudder, and I just watched it because we talked about this before in passing.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see why that would fuck you up at 4.
Yeah, it's a very disturbing trauma film. And to be fair, I just wanted to watch it because there was this lady, a skeleton old lady on the cover, and I just thought that looked cool because skeletons were cool.
That is fair. She wasn't even that, skeletal looking in the actual movie.
She wasn't quite that elderly. Yeah, it was a really messed up movie. I had a lot of unsupervised time. It was the 80s. They didn't, really care about what we did.
What else did you watch when you were far too young?
Oh, Jaws, which was terrible because I lived in North Carolina, so we went to the beach a lot, terrified of the ocean. Piranha, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. I remember watching it in 4th grade and having nightmares forever after that. Thank you, Tim Curry.
He says you're welcome, probably.
Yeah.
So we're not there yet because we're going to be starting from Tales from the Crypt from the very beginning, from the first episode. Tim Curry is in one of these episodes in the future, and his characters are amazing.
Tim Curry's fantastic. I can't wait till we get to that episode.
I remember there was a meme that went around one time that was you can tell a lot about a person with how they first remember seeing him.
Fabulous.
Yes.
All right, what about you? What about your horrible influences?
So my influences were actually my grandma. Similar-ish situation to where I remember a story that they told me that when I was a toddler, there was some party at our house and Interview with the Vampire was playing on the TV. And I'm just glued to the screen and I'm not moving. I'm very dedicated toddler watching this movie and my mom is freaking out and my grandma's just like, "It's okay. She'll be fine. She won't remember any of this." And then a couple of years later, she gave me the VHS. And then shortly after that, she was babysitting my brother and I remember watching The Mummy with her. I remember watching Buffy with her. And it was all her fault. She's a very good influence, I guess.
Your grandma had great taste, I gotta say. So what part does horror play in your life today?
My living room is pretty much decked out in Beetlejuice and Oogie Boogie. I love me some Oogie. He is my favorite. Also, thanks to that, we met. So I'd say it was a pretty good time.
We met at a zombie walk many years ago. I believe you were just barely out of diapers. What were you, 17, 18?
I think I was at least 18. I think I was actually closer to 2021. So we've known each other about 10 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. And then we reconnected because we roomed together at a horror con. And you helped take care of me as I was dying. It was great.
Anytime. You're my favorite dying person.
Yay. And together we went on to found Spookshow Babes Burlesque, which is a horror-themed burlesque production, basically. We just randomly produce shows whenever we feel like it. We've done some sold-out shows at some horror conventions.
Standing room only.
Yes, it was great. We have produced a virtual show, which was set up more like a film called Tales of Terror. Yes. We've done a lot together in the realm of horror. So this is just one more thing.
But there's more, because you do a lot.
I do a lot of everything. I do a lot of horror cosplay. Well, most well known in the local con circuit for my Chucky. I custom made a costume and I built a little box for me to stand in, a good guy box. But also, I am an actress, usually of the stage, but recently I finally fulfilled my dream of starring in a horror film. I have a small part in a little independent horror film called Feast or Sunday. 10 out of 10 recommend.
What can you tell us about it?
It is a Easter-themed horror film, but it goes a little deeper than that. Basically, one of the plots centers around a small town trying to revive their annual Passion of the Christ play.
I can see this going horribly wrong.
Yes, they haven't produced it in many years because of a terrible tragedy. So, yeah, you can find me in Feast or Sunday. I have a small part in that, and I was recently cast in a short horror film that I will be filming soon with a couple cast members and friends of mine from Feaster. Can't give out any information yet.
Right, because that one's still a secret.
Yes. I haven't been authorized to release any details, but I can say I'm in another. And I'm fulfilling yet another bucket list item of mine, which is to die on screen.
I mean this in the best way, but I can't wait to see you die.
I can't wait to die.
So another thing that Tish and I have in common is that we went to the same school. Mm-hmm. So over this pandemic, I reached out to her and said, hey, do you want to do a podcast?
And I was like, yeah, I like to talk. Why not?
Yes. So we decided that we were going to combine our talents. Mm-hmm. And here we are.
Yes. Putting that $15,000 we put into schooling to good use.
Oh, it went up when I went.
Oh, no. I did go to school a few years before you, but yes, my digital media arts diploma. I'm getting some use out of it.
Yes, and I went for broadcasting.
So we did want to touch on why start with Tales from the Crypt.
The reason we decided to start with Tales from the Crypt is because it's so campy. And with our podcast name being Camp Creep, it's pretty perfect.
It is. It's kind of the perfect beginning for an anthology podcast because it is kind of one of the most popular horror anthologies that there has ever been. I mean, everyone knows the Crypt Keeper. He's a staple in pop culture, not just horror. So I think it's a great introduction to horror. I think for many people, it was their introduction into horror. I know I loved it as a child. Mm-hmm. Absolutely terrified of the Crypt Keeper. Was up until I finally met John Kassir at a horror con and heard him do the voice and I was like, okay, all right, great. I'm not going to have nightmares. This is awesome. Great.
Do you remember how you stumbled upon Tales from the Crypt?
I had a relative that had a satellite dish and thus had HBO. Yes, they had a little more money than we did. And my cousins, who were a big influence on me, they loved horror movies, so they were always making me watch horror movies with them, which got me into horror. They loved Tales from the Crypt. And so we would just watch it, and it had enough humor that it didn't give me nightmares, per se. Definitely scared me, but it was just funny enough that they could get away with letting me watch it without getting in too much trouble.
When you watched it, because you said it was on Showtime, right?
HBO.
So when you watched it and it was on HBO, you saw all the boobs.
Yeah, I was not supposed to be seeing boobs, which doesn't make sense to me, but okay.
Yeah, censorship is questionable some days, but
yes,
we won't dive into that yet.
No problem with the gore, but boobs, that's a problem. Yeah, there were lots of boobs. Yes, I recall that. And then, the later seasons, I think I watched those on syndicated television, like Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
So missing out on the boobage.
That's how I started watching it too, was thanks to Sci-Fi. It used to play every night before wrestling, and it was on around my bedtime because I was probably only 6 or 7 when I started watching, and I would leave it on, turn the TV on a timer or whatever, and fall asleep to dead time stories from him.
Nice.
All right. Should we start creeping?
Let us creep into the crypt.
All right.
Season 1, Episode 1 of Tales from the Crypt.
The Man Who Was Death. In the first episode of Tales from the Crypt, we meet Niles. Niles is an electrocutioner for the state, but tragedy happens and he loses his job. And he's not exactly thrilled about it, so he decides to basically be the anti-Batman. And then he goes on a spree, he gets caught, and the whole episode starts over again.
So this episode starts out with, of course, the first introduction of the Crypt Keeper, enjoying watching little flies go into a bug zapper, and then we get into the actual episode. It's nice and brief.
It is. And the episode starts with this guy being dragged to the electric chair.
Yes, we are on death row, and we're watching dear Charlie get dragged to the chair, because poor Charlie, like many of us, asked his boss for a raise. Boss said no, so Charlie went and got drunk on his lunch break, went out, got a gun, shot his boss, accidentally shot and killed the secretary. Terrible tragedy.
It is a tragedy, but maybe because you are the HR manager at our other job,
yes,
can you tell everybody the correct way to go about getting a raise?
Yes, there are many ways to get a raise. Oh, none of them involve shooting your boss.
Or the secretary.
Yes, no, there's many ways to go about it. Documenting, your work and your improvements over a period of time.
I recommend a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, there are many ways to go about trying to get a raise, but yeah, murder is not one of them.
No.
Pretty much guaranteed to lead to not getting a raise.
Yeah, you'll get fired.
Yes.
Like Charlie. Thank you. I'll be
welcome.
here all day. I live here.
So, and we meet Niles, and Niles is unsettling. Creepy doesn't even begin to describe him, because he's just an unsettling
He's dedicated.
gentleman.
He really likes his job.
He does. He loves killing people. Specifically killing murderers, I would assume. The interesting thing is he breaks the fourth wall and he talks right to the audience, making it somehow even more unsettling. His casualness about all the death and the fact that he doesn't like to look away.
So you're right. Niles breaks the fourth wall throughout the entire episode, and we get to see into his mind, which is not a place I would like to visit ever again.
Oh, thank you.
No. And everybody in the jail knows who Niles is.
Yes.
The warden is even a little on edge around him, but Niles does the deed.
And he does it well.
He does it real well.
Yes.
Well done.
He does reveal that he started out as an electrician for the prison and then became, the electrocutioner.
As one does.
Yes. And when I was watching this episode at home with my fiance, who is an electrician, he did stop to reassure me that he will never become an executioner.
Did you make him pinky promise that?
I didn't, now that I think back on it. That might be something I need to work into, like, our prenup.
I'll make sure to mention it in my speech as your maid of honor.
Yes, please do.
Sir, if you become an electrocutioner, we're gonna have a talk.
So, after work, we get to our... I can't tell if it's our favorite or least favorite scene. Niles goes to a diner. And, oh my god, please... I can't say the words. Please tell them what the hell he orders.
Niles orders a black coffee and a cheese sandwich.
Like, who on this planet is going to a restaurant saying, you know what I want? You know what I'm really craving that I couldn't just make at home myself, that I need someone else to physically make for me? A cheese sandwich, a piece of cheese between 2 slices of bread.
Well, here's a fun thing for you, Tish. It is dinner time right now, and I made you dinner. Let me go grab it.
Absolutely not excited about this prospect. I'm lactose intolerant. So I have to very much limit my dairy. Also, never been a huge fan of cheese. I have since expanded my repertoire, my taste buds, and gotten a little bit into cheese. And oh look, she brought me a sandwich.
I'm gonna be nice, and I'm gonna eat half, and you can eat this half.
Oh boy. So it is 2 pieces of white bread, and in between them is like a slice and a half of what looks to be a Kraft single.
Excuse me, I got you name brand Sargento's sharp cheddar cheese.
Sharp cheddar. At least it's good cheese and not something that had plastic film peeled off of it. That is like literally one molecule away from being plastic itself. Yeah. Okay.
Shall we taste test?
Let's taste test the cheese sandwich.
This is an ASMR nobody asked for.
Who would pay money for this?
Well, it was the 80s, so probably wasn't that much. Tish's face is one that is not amused.
It's just a lot of cheese and bread.
Sometimes you can make it a festive sandwich by adding mayonnaise or mustard, but no.
Absolutely not.
Well, we just got the straight up cheese sandwich.
Straight up cheese sandwich.
There, you can throw it up there. I will repurpose this.
Need some butter, needs to be grilled, please.
Yeah, I think that's what I'll be doing tonight after you leave, is making a real grilled cheese.
Yeah, that sounds like a much better plan. So yeah, Niles orders a cheese sandwich. If all the other red flags weren't a warning sign that this gentleman is severely mentally unstable, that this gentleman is a psychopath, the fact that he went into a restaurant and ordered a cheese sandwich, that should be the primary indicator that there's something very wrong.
It is. But while he's at this restaurant, they're watching the news, and the news makes a very important announcement.
Niles' state is going to do away with the death penalty, which means poor Niles is going to be out of a job.
At first, Niles is a little worried, but then he's kind of like, it's no big deal. I'm an electrician. I can go back to my old job. But the very next scene, it's the warden and him sitting in the warden's office, and he's piecing him out.
Basically, because everyone in the prison is so utterly creeped out by Niles, and the prisoners don't trust him because, he was executing them not that long ago. They can't give Niles another job in the prison.
So now Niles is jobless. He's only got that one main skill. He should probably not go into customer service.
I would not recommend. So Niles ends up at a bar, talking to his good pal Vic, the bartender, who ends up inspiring Niles.
You can't spell Vic without ick. I got that from the Fairly Odd Parents. I wish I could say I did that on my own.
That is correct. So Niles is inspired to basically go Dexter.
Yes. Not to be confused with Dexter's Laboratory.
Dexter, the serial killer. The anti-hero.
Niles becomes a spectator at the courthouse. The first trial that we see him at is for a guy named James Flood. Creepy
mofo. And James Flood is found innocent of murder due to a clerical error, much to
everybody's dismay.
Yes, and his sister cries out, "But he killed my brother!"
And he's just like, "Leave me alone, bitch."
Yeah. So James is, like I said, one evil-looking son of a bitch.
He's not a teddy bear. He's big and fluffy like one, but he is not nice.
And so then we see James, driving down an alley. The song Rumble is playing. If you've never heard Rumble, Google it. It's a classic that instantly makes you think of, like, old school biker. And he, and you're like, okay.
But then when he gets... the closer he gets, the more you see Niles standing there, and Niles is telling us, the audience, the camera, that he has set up a plan. And then when Flood gets there to open up this gate or whatever, I imagine he was going home to celebrate being free due to the clerical error. And zip zap.
James Flood is no more. He's been electrocuted. So after James's murder, Niles goes back to the bar. He and Vic are talking about James's quote-unquote accidental death. And it kind of confirms that Niles did the right thing.
Vic is not a good person.
Vic is a terrible influence. Niles really should have surrounded himself with some better friends.
Some people have the angel and a devil on their shoulder. Niles just has 2 Vics. So back to the courthouse, we get a 2-for-1 special. We have Cynthia and Theodore, and it's about the mysterious death of Theodore's first wife.
Mm-hmm. And of course, they're acquitted. They're found not guilty.
And then they go to celebrate in a hot tub.
For some sexy naked time.
There is sexy naked time, and I don't even like that word. But I have questions.
Okay.
So they're in a hot tub.
Yeah.
But they also have alcohol with them because they're celebrating.
Yeah.
And the area looks pretty nice, so it kind of looks like a gym to me. And this is where I have my issues.
Uh-huh.
So either these two are butt-ass naked in a public gym hot tub, or there's a little bit extra law breaking here about to happen, and Niles broke into their home, but when he catches them in the hot tub, they're both like, oh, my money is in my wallet, or I've got money in my purse. So they're either being not good people out in public, or B, he just broke into their house and, like, he has so many other options of things he can take.
Yeah, I mean, while I wouldn't put it past anyone to have sex in a public hot tub.
Gross.
Pretty sure it happens all the time.
Gross.
Yeah, stay out of hot tubs, kids. They're disgusting. I believe that they were in their own home because the whole reason that they allegedly murdered his wife was for the money. So I believe that they were probably pretty wealthy, so they had a hot tub at home.
True.
2, they were naked, so obviously you don't have your wallet on you when you're buck naked in a hot tub. So I believe that they were probably in their home.
When we were watching this episode together, I remember you were laughing at how they died when they got electrocuted. Will you share with the class why?
Oh, because, like, the male actor was going so, like, over the top with his electrocution, while the female actress was giving more of a subtle seizure effect. And it was just comical, like, the looks on their faces of just 2 people trying to figure out what the hell you look like when you're being electrocuted. It was quite amusing.
Yes. I don't think we go back to the bar in between this and, like, the last few scenes, do we?
No, we don't go back to Vic. So next what you see, Niles steps on a newspaper and it says, Go-Go Dancer acquitted for boyfriend's murder. And you see this photo of a beautiful young woman and then a creepy looking lech, and very old man. And then it's boobs.
So many boobs.
Boobs.
Actually, how many boobs do you think we had in this episode?
Individually or as a pair?
As a pair.
I'm gonna say 10.
You're pretty close. We got 4 sets of boobs.
4 sets of boobs. It just felt like a lot because it's just, there were boobs out of focus, there were boobs in focus. We panned past boobs. Oh, there's boobs over there in the corner of the screen. Like, we're literally just boobs everywhere.
I wish I could remember this episode as a kid, but I don't, because even then I watched it on Sci-Fi, so yeah. I know it was heavily edited.
Yes, I cannot imagine how they aired this one with all the nudity in it. But it was quite interesting. Niles walks into a bar, and it's not a strip club. It is, I believe, when I was growing up, they would have called it a topless bar or a quote-unquote titty bar, as my dad would say, where the women are just merely topless, and it's kind of like a regular club, but there just happens to be topless women all around.
In cages. Some cage dancer magic.
So Niles has this great quote, probably my favorite quote from the episode, which is, "Treat the whores like queens and the queens like whores."
Classy.
Such a feminist, Niles.
Classy ass motherfucker.
Yes. So he focuses in on the one particular girl dancing in the cage, and he declares that...
Ooh, this is my favorite quote, actually. couple of minutes, we'll have ourselves one dead little go-go dancer.
So he tries to murder her. He tries to electrocute her. You can see that he's got wires running to the cage that she's in, and it doesn't work. Turns out it was a bust. A little sting operation to catch the guy that's been electrocuting people. I mean, really, who was surprised that it turned out to be Niles? I mean, it's all he knew how to do.
He's just a poor, sad guy.
So he gets arrested, and that's when he finds out that great news. The death penalty has been reinstated.
Oh, shit.
So we're brought back to a great mirror of the beginning, the opening scene. They are dragging Niles to the death chamber through death row.
He's screaming the same stuff that Charles was screaming, like, the governor's gonna call, he's gonna let me out, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yep. And his boss has this moment that it's a little creepy. It brings him a little too much satisfaction to lean down to Niles and just reassure him, like, oh, there was nothing I could do. Sorry, bud.
Mm-hmm. Sure is sorry.
Yeah, I've had some really toxic ex-bosses. And I would just like to say, if I'm on my deathbed, or strapped to the electric chair for that matter, please stay away.
Please.
I don't want to hear from you.
Yeah, I don't think I'd really want any of my ex-bosses or really anybody to be near me at that time.
No, not a good time. So, Niles states that he turned down the customary haircut, which is apparently to prevent his head from bursting into flames.
That makes sense.
Because he was so convinced that the governor's call would come through any minute. And my question is, like, what was he so concerned about? That he was going to be pardoned and then have to walk around with a shitty haircut as a convicted murderer who was saved at the last moment? Like, I'd just really like to think that would be the least of his worries.
It's just hair. It'll grow back. Just get the buzz cut. It'll be fine. You'll be dead.
Also, I vaguely remember from watching Faces of Death with my dad when I was a kid. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. But I remember watching a guy in the electric chair, and they put a wet sponge on his head to keep his head from bursting into flames.
If they put a sponge on somebody's head, wouldn't the water, like the electric currents, I'm not an electrician. I'm not even great at normal sciencey stuff. But
Yeah.
wouldn't that make it go faster?
Yeah, I think that might have had something to do with it too. Maybe bring more electricity straight to the head, because the water is a great conductor. Listen to me, trying to reference that 7th grade science class where we learned about electricity. So, yep, Niles is fried, electrocuted, and then we go back to the Crypt Keeper, who, of course, totally on brand, is electrocuting himself for funsies, as one does.
He just really likes having a zip-zappingly good time.
Yes. There's some good puns in there. One that I didn't catch until we put on the subtitles, or the captions.
See, that's why I love captions, because a lot of the puns he makes is just spelling things differently,
Yes.
and you don't catch that the first time.
There's one, it was what, W-A-T-T instead of W-H-A-T. But something of note about this scene that my fiance pointed out is, you see his feet. And I say that because I have usually I recall, when I think of the Crypt Keeper, I think of him kind of from, like, the waist up. But here you see him kicking his creepy little decrepit feet. And it was really upsetting, much in the way that when you see, like, the Muppets walking down the street, and you see them in, like, people shoes, and it kind of upsets you when you watch, like, Kermit ride a bicycle. It's just something about it's visually upsetting.
He just woke up. He doesn't have time to go get a pedicure. Give him some slack.
I did check, and unfortunately there is no wiki feet entry for the Crypt Keeper.
So are you going to make a wiki entry for his feet?
So apparently it's quite an extensive process to try to get somebody onto WikiFeet. So you have to have, one, an account to make a submission to WikiFeet, and two, you have to go into deep detail and provide a lot of documentation. Because yes, I did look and see if I could get him onto WikiFeet.
This is hardcore.
Yeah, and to be fair, I just really don't like feet. Feet gross me out a lot, so the idea of going the distance just to get the Crypt Keeper a WikiFeet entry, it's not my jam, but if somebody out there wants to do it and screenshot it and send us proof...
You can send that screenshot to campcreeppodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, please.
Growing up as a latchkey kid in a small town in Maine, I always assumed I was safe. After all, unless it makes national news, murder isn't something people talk about around here. But that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Murder, She Told is a true crime podcast featuring crime stories, unsolved murders and missing persons, and baffling cold cases from my home state of Maine, New England, and small towns across America. These are the crime stories your hometown doesn't want to talk about, the mysteries buried deep in the newspaper archives of local American history. These are the homicides you've probably never heard of before. Through detailed storytelling and connections with family, friends, and investigators closest to the case, Murder, She Told will hit home for any true crime fan, whether you're from Maine or from away. Visit murdershetold.com to suggest your hometown crime story, and subscribe now wherever you get your favorite podcasts. I'm Kristen Seavey, and this is Murder, She Told.
Now let's talk about the actors and everybody that was a part of this episode, because you did some deep dive recently.
I did, because that's probably one of my favorite things about horror anthologies, especially something like Tales from the Crypt, is because they're shorts, because it's something, it's not the same characters every week. You get a ton of actors. You get a lot of people early in their career, because for a lot of people it's going to be one of their early gigs. It's the reason, a lot of people have Law and Order credits, a lot of those revolving sitcoms where they have new characters introduced every week. It's a great jumping board for actors. So, of course, we have Niles, who's played by Bill Sadler, very famous actor. Ironically, he was in The Green Mile.
Oh!
Which is also about somebody getting the electric chair. The book is better.
Most of the time it is.
I did find, like I said, most of the actors, it was just people that have done, they've just done small parts, here, there, their entire careers, just doing different shows. Not many of them, got their big break. I did note, if you're a fan of the show Mom, which is it's in its final season on CBS.
Yeah, I think I watched that before.
Yes. Allison Janney and Anna Faris.
Oh, Anna Faris is one of my favorites. I love her voice.
One of the characters on the show, one of the supporting characters who is a friend of Allison Janney's character, is actually the sister in James Flood's trial, the one who screams, "You killed my brother!" That's her. It was one of her one-off things that she did early in her career to get some momentum, some fodder for her actor's reel, obviously. Yeah, she had a major reoccurring role. She was a pretty active supporting character in the show Mom for its entire run. She was one of the bigger ones. Everyone else, it was just little things here and there, some voiceover work. The big star of the episode was Bill Sadler. As it keeps going, the directors get bigger, the actors get bigger, you're going to get bigger names, but you're still going to find a lot of people very early in their career just getting their start. It was their, one of their jumping off points. Fun fact, both Bill Sadler and the actor who played Vic, Roy Brocksmith, they're both in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
I have a confession to make.
Oh no, what?
I have never seen any of the Bill and Ted movies.
Oh no.
But I like to think I'm still excellent to each other. I don't know. I am so sorry.
That's okay. Bill Sadler plays Death in it. But yeah, so Vic is played by Roy Brocksmith, and he's got a lot of horror creds to his name. He was in Arachnophobia, which is one of my childhood faves.
I have that. It's good times.
It's a great film. So that's just a few fun facts about some of the actors in this episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, so all in all, did you enjoy this episode?
So I did enjoy that episode. It had, I felt like, a nice balance of the elements I enjoy about Tales from the Crypt. I mean, while it was a little bit dated, obviously super, super 80s, it had very talented cast, had a great plot, and even though I should have seen the end twist coming of course he's going to end up in the electric chair. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a great twist. I thought it was a good story.
You just kind of mentioned it, how you didn't see that twist happening, But at the first scene, when Niles is introducing himself to the camera, when he's walking away, he says, "It's gotta be the electric chair for me." So I enjoyed it because there was foreshadowing.
Gotta love a good foreshadow.
Yeah, so that's it for our very first episode. Go team.
Woo!
Thank you for listening to Camp Creep.
Our theme music was created by Steve-O Dockerson.
Our logo was designed by Tish DeLano.
The show is produced by Lauren Jewell and Tish DeLano and edited by Lauren Jewell.
You can support the show by subscribing to us on iTunes and leave us a review.
Creep it real.